สวัสดีครับ
ว่าไง
สวัสดีครับคุณทูตสวัสดีนะครับ
สบายดีครับ
ครับขอบคุณนะครับที่นาเชิญมาครับ
โอ้ไม่ได้หรอกต้องขอบคุณมากกว่า
ครับ
เป็นไง
ครับก็เรื่อยๆครับท่านทูต
อืม ตำแหน่งนี้เรื่อยๆมีด้วยเหรอ
อ๋อไม่หรอกครับครับ
ช่วงนี้ต้องวุ่นหน่อยสิ
ครับก็นิดหน่อยครับนิดหน่อย
ดี
ครับมีอะไรให้ผมเน้นเป็นพิเศษไหมครับท่านทูต
นะแล้วแต่เลยเพราะว่าตอนนี้คงอยากฟังมั้งว่าเมืองไทยทิศทางหรืออะไรต่างๆ เหล่านี้เพิ่มได้นะนอกจากเหนือจากไอ้SDG ที่เราเอามาใช้แล้วอ่ะ
ได้ครับ
แต่เทียบกับ CP เอา SDG มาใช้นี่ก็ยังอธิบายกันหน่อยกันแล้วกันว่าใช้ยังไงนะ
ครับได้ครับ
Good afternoon, everybody. Namaste and sawadika. Thank you so much for investing your time with us this afternoon and joining us for this webinar co-organized by the Royal Thai Embassy in Kathmandu and the Nepal Economic Forum. I'm Snehraj Bandari, an advisory board member with the Nepal Economic Forum, and I'll be moderating the session today focused on business and SDGs. As with the panels that took place this morning and afternoon, we'll follow a very similar format. And for our panel particularly, we'll start with 3 opening remarks, followed by a panel discussion with a stellar group of individuals based in Nepal and Thailand. Without further ado, I'd like to request His Excellency Mr. Vosita Vorasaph to share his opening remarks as the chair for this panel.
Thank you. Namaste and Sawadee Krab. I would like to welcome you all to Thailand-Nepal Economic Forum, Webinar Series 2022, co-organized by the Royal Thai Embassy in Kathmandu and Nepal Economic Forum. The webinars are aimed at sharing knowledge and lessons learned, exploring collaboration opportunities, as well as discussing new economic trends in Thailand, Nepal, and beyond. I would like to thank the co-organizer, Nepal Economic Forum, as well as all the distinguished co-chair, panelists, and moderator for joining us and making this event as reality. Please allow me to share some background of the topic in this panel. It is a pleasure to learn that Thailand and Nepal attach great importance to implementation of the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development. Both are making progress and remain committed in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. Multi-stakeholder partnerships are key. In fact, Our businesses have played an important role in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals as part of the whole of society approach. Kun Netithorn Praditsarn from Charoen Pokphand Group. He is also a Deputy Secretary General, Global Compact Network Thailand. We'll share with you our best practice of SDGs implementation in Thai business. Thailand is very fortunate to have the sufficiency economy philosophy as a guiding concept in achieving the SDG. In addition, we have introduced the SEP for SDGs partnerships to exchange knowledge, experiences, and best practices with neighboring countries and countries in other regions. More information can be found on the embassy website. Apart from this panel, we just have 2 interactive panels on bio-circular green economies, a guiding concept under Thailand's BIMSTEC chairmanship 2022 to 2023, and startup ecosystem and innovation in Thailand and Nepal today. Both can be watched later from the embassy's Facebook page. We plan to organize further events as part of Thailand-Nepal Economic Forum Webinar Series 2022. Please stay tuned. I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Next, we have Joint Secretary for the Southeast Asia and Pacific Division from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sushil Lamsal, who I would now request to share your opening remarks as the co-chair for this session. Thank you so much, Sushil.
Thank you so much, Snehaji. Namaste. Excellency Ambassador, His Excellency Vosita Vorasaph, Ambassador of Thailand to Nepal, Mr. Sujeev Shakya, CEO, Nepal Economic Forum, distinguished guests, panelists, friends in this platform and on Facebook, namaste, and a very warm good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to the Royal Thai Embassy and Nepal Economic Forum for inviting me to speak in this panel. Aligning our business practices with evolving international modus operandi, particularly in the context of combating climate change, is crucial. Trusted partners in development. They've been enjoying excellent bilateral relations based on mutual trust, respect, and understanding ever since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1959. Ever since, the 2 countries have been working together under various bilateral, regional, and multilateral frameworks in deepening and expanding bilateral relations in several sectors of mutual concern and interest. We appreciate Thailand's regular support in the field of human resources development of Nepal under Colombo Plan and Thailand International Development Cooperation Agency. There is a strong bond of friendship between our peoples, which gets amply reflected during times of crisis. We highly value the support from the Royal Family of Thailand and the Royal Thai government for providing crucial medical equipment and supplies for the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 infection. Nepal and Thailand work closely on issues that are of common global and regional interests, including under BIMSTEC's framework. The volume of bilateral trade and investment between our 2 countries has been increasing over the years. But of course, there's great scope for further expansion of economic exchanges between the 2 countries, especially in the fields of trade and investment, agriculture, tourism, construction, and energy. Ladies and gentlemen, the objective of this discussion is to take stock of the new economic trends in Thailand and Nepal, especially on how evolving sustainable business practices are likely to promote the global sustainability agenda. For Nepal, no issue is more urgent than this, namely to align our economic priorities and development practices, both at the government, corporate, or civil society level, combating the specter of a calamitous future that we're all being propelled towards. A future without a clean, green, and resilient environment is no future. Therefore, no country can afford to pursue further economic growth without internalizing sustainability as an essential corporate agenda. It's incumbent upon the government, civil society, media, financial markets, etc., to driving the sustainability agenda in a holistic approach across the entire spectrum of business enterprises. In achieving this, though, promoting the role and capacity of the private sector in facing the challenge of development is vital. With the evolving business environment, enterprises should consider social and environmental sustainability as a core strategic priority. Integrating social, environmental, and economic concerns through good stakeholder relations, corporate social responsibility, and the code of conduct for implementing environment-friendly practices will be critical in maintaining long-term business sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, Thailand's biocircular green economic model, the BCG model, is a case in point. This innovative approach of development pursues inclusive and sustainable growth by building on traditional and cultural knowledge and capitalizing on biodiversity and other areas of competitive advantage to transform the country to a value-based and innovation-driven economy. In Nepal, sustainable businesses have been gaining traction in recent years. Startups using local technology and materials have been growing. There are great potentials of ensuring sustainability in businesses in 4 sectors, particularly forestry and land use, agriculture, energy, and water. Technological readiness and adaptive capacity in responding to the impacts of climate change are critical elements in promoting sustainable practices, both in Thailand and in Nepal. And I see huge potentials for mutual exchange and learning between our 2 countries. Our 2 countries are both rich in tradition and culture and share many commonalities in the economic, social, and cultural spheres. There is much that we can learn from each other and profit from each other's experiences and expertise. Promoting collaboration and cooperation across sectors, such as tourism, services, energy, etc., will be critical in fostering economic growth, generating jobs, and raising incomes in both our countries. It's in this context that I believe that today's discussions are highly relevant and useful. It will support mutual learning and sharing of best practices and expertise in achieving sustainable business practices. I congratulate the organizers for hosting this event and wish all success. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sushilji, and
you
also
very
for sharing the diplomatic relations between Thailand and Nepal, the history of that, and also sharing how the private sector will play an indispensable role going forward in advancing the global development goals. Thank you so much. And last but not least, I'd like to request Sujeev, the chair of the Nepal Economic Forum, to share your perspectives on the thematic area of our panel discussion, business and SDGs. What is the outlook for Nepal, Thailand, and the region? Over to you, Sujeev.
Thank you. Thank you, Sneh. We're very happy to be hosting this webinar today. We've had 2 great sessions. I'm looking forward to the 3rd one. And I think it's a landmark webinar as we are beginning the cooperation between Thailand and Royal Embassy of Thailand here in Kathmandu and Nepal Economic Forum. This is part of the Nepal and the World program that the Nepal Economic Forum has started in terms of reaching out to countries beyond our immediate neighbors, as Nepal has now diplomatic countries with over 108, close to 180 countries. In terms of business and SDGs and responsible businesses, a lot of work that as Nepal Economic Forum continuously does. We have the Himalayan Circular Economy Forum. We had Mark Perrin, our senior fellow, moderate the discussion in the morning. We also have the Renewable Energy Center working around business and parts of the SDGs led by Suman Basnet. We also work on the Center for Digital Transformation, which again looks at accelerating the pace of digitization, getting into what we call is the knowledge management Industrial Revolution 4.0, as Pratibha Pandey was discussing as she was moderating the previous session. It is about how I'm more keen about listening to this panel and to talk about how these linkages are coming together. We are very happy that the resident representative of UNDP, Aishani, is here with us. And there is always a close connect around business and Nepal Economic Forum as private sector-led thought center has been continuously working around how do we build up responsible businesses? How do we look at the private sector connecting to the sustainable development goals? Be it on looking at goal number 8, decent work and economic growth, be it looking at number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. These are directly connected to the private sector. And these are areas perhaps we have to collaborate. And I'm very keen to listen to our speaker from Thailand and to listen to the experiences so that we can also learn from what is happening in Thailand. Finally, I think this is a start of a great partnership as the SDG Goal 17 emphasizes on partnership. This is a great partnership we are beginning, and we are going to learn on how private sector and SDGs interact. I'm really looking forward to listening to this session. Thank you very much, and over to you, Sneh.
Thank you, Sujeev, and thank you also for highlighting how the SDGs differ from the MDGs, particularly because of Goal 8 and 9 in engaging the private sector for economic opportunities and for job creation opportunities. Thank you for that. Thank you all for your opening remarks and for setting the larger context in which we're anchoring our discussion for today. I remember when I graduated from university in 2009, the president of our university said, "Go out into the world and do well, but more importantly, go out into the world and do good." I feel like a lot of the discussions today that we'll have will help us gain unique insights onto what is happening in Nepal and Thailand. And the timing is also spot on because we're now nearing about 7 years since we've all collectively embarked on this goal towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And now the world actually has less than 3,200 days to collectively achieve the targets that we have set to improve the state of the world, leaving no one behind. I'd like to now shift gears and once again welcome all of our panelists and also our audience potentially who are tuning in for our webinar. I'd like to remind everyone that we are live on the Facebook page for the Royal Thai Embassy, and I would encourage all of you to share your comments or questions during the course of our discussion. We'll be spending the next 50 minutes really mulling over how much more we can do collectively to mobilize private sector finance and investments towards sustainability, and what kinds of regional synergies we could draw, particularly between Nepal and Thailand, to showcase best practices, as well as what we could do together to create an enabling environment to align business practices with the SDGs. I'd like to request each of our esteemed panelists to help kickstart our discussion with our opening introductory remarks. And we will now start with Ms. Aishani, who is the resident representative of the UNDP and has vast experience in Nepal, Bhutan, and the North Africa region. Ms. Aishani, I'd like to welcome you once again. And if you could also touch upon the broader context of private sector engagement with the SDGs and your observations really on where Nepal is at from a macro perspective on progress towards the SDGs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Snehaji, Your Excellency, Vosita, Vorasaph, and Mr. Joint Secretary, Mr. Lamsal, and Sujeev Shakya, my friend, CEO of Nepal Economic Forum, and respected colleagues, friends, and those who are participating in this important webinar. Very pleased, Your Excellency and Sujeev, for the invitation. Thank you very much. I'm not very sure that what I'm going to say is not very redundant, because all of you by now, after 7 years, are quite familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals as we move to 2022. Nevertheless, when I received a bit of the background and we discussed yesterday, I think the most complicated issue right now is the sustainable development in pre and post pandemic era. I think that is I think what we are all kind of shaken currently. And my deliberations or my notes or my data are coming from the most recent reports of UNDESA, UNDP, ADB, and UNESCAP in Thailand that just published a few months ago some latest reports. So definitely COVID disrupted the people I think, first, the economy and the nature. So if we say people, economy, and nature, these are the three dimensions of the sustainable development: social, economic, and environmental dimensions of the sustainable development. And from progress towards the SDGs was already slow pre-pandemic, and pandemic didn't help it. And we read that some 124 million additional people will be in the extreme poverty going forward. And we also say that for the last 2 years, some 8% of the hours, global employment hours, have been lost, equivalent to 255 millions of jobs. So this is about jobs. I'll come to why it is important. And in Nepal, India, we say something like 400 days of, I think it's a bit more than that, of full or partial school closure between February and April 2021, and 100+ million kids were out of school and dropouts. We think that around 12 million kids will be out of school in this region, Southwest Asian region, from pre-primary to secondary, upper secondary schools. The deficiency in, my cousin says that who is a teacher, says that kids that come to school cannot read a proper text. 10-year-olds cannot read now and cannot do the basic numeracy. And we also know that 1.6 billion informal sector workers out of 2 billion in the world, they all got affected during this pandemic. So it gives you a little bit the context in which that we will have to address the sustainable development goals going forward. Now, add to that COVID, and we all read it now, it's about conflict and cash crisis. The humanitarian crisis, if we look at Ukraine and what is happening, to add to Afghanistan, to Yemen, to all other conflicts that are in the world, the debt distresses, and you all read about what's happening in Sri Lanka, about the macroeconomic stability, the taxes that are not getting into the coffers, the remittances that are not coming in the way that it came, the tourists that got delayed in returning back, and foreign direct investment, or the delayed economic activity. So these are all made the governments to reprioritize. We saw that all whatever that the government had to do had to be rethought of, reprioritized, and they had to cut the spending, and all of that at the expense of the sustainable development goals. Vaccination didn't come in equal pace for developing countries and also the developed countries. The social protection was not there to support the people who lost jobs. And also the recovery, and most of the time Thailand or even Nepal and other countries in this region, our private sector mostly on the MSMEs, and most of them had to stop their jobs and they had to borrow and they had to just lay down. So this is the reality in which that we had to work over the last 2 years. Now, private sector is responsible for 60% of the global GDP and also 90% of the jobs in the developing countries. So you can see that link, and it is still, nevertheless, whatever that we see still remain pertinent. And sustainable development, or the Agenda 2030, is still, for me at least, a blueprint. And be it on human rights front, be it on labor standard front, be it on environment or anti-corruption, integrity and transparency front, all these are global compact principles through which the private sector can do a lot. In terms of the beginning, the first 5 to 6 years, including Nepal, we all were engaged in awareness raising in private sector to make them understand, or basically make things easier, to know what is sustainable development agenda is, or what are the sustainable goals are. Then transitioning phase from awareness to action, that was the phase that we got delayed and we got stuck with the pandemic. So going forward, I think, again, private sector has a huge responsibility and also I would say beyond corporate social responsibility, it's a humanitarian responsibility for future, for the capacities of the future, for the youth, and particularly in Nepal, where youth is a huge proportion of the population, to have the right set of skills and to have the right skills of a set of capacities, and also the right set of infrastructure and investment options. I think Joint Secretary mentioned about it, but again, here the problem would be that even private sector who got affected, how would they look after themselves and also to invest for the public good? And innovation, technology, we saw private sector could do a lot. The vaccination came very quickly. So many vaccines came very quickly. So that is private sector working together and to showing that it is possible when private sector wants. And how would that kind of interest, how would that kind of enthusiasm can also be used to unlock some 12 trillion that I read in the market opportunities across in different sectors. Again, allow me to repeat: agriculture, the cities, energy, particularly the renewable energy, and health. So I would, for the moment, stop here, Snehaji. I will come back again over the course of, not to give everything that I have on paper. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Aishani, and we also appreciate you sharing all of these staggering statistics. And we do understand that the pandemic has significantly impacted progress on the SDGs as well. But I appreciate you sharing how much the private sector can do and highlighting the opportunities of investment in the 4 sectors that you mentioned. I think you also highlighted the role of the Global Compact principles, and I think that really helps me transition to our next panelist here today really well. We would now move from Nepal to Thailand, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Netithorn, who is the Vice President for Group Sustainability and Communications at the CP Group, which is the world's 4th largest food producer. He is also the Deputy Secretary General of the Global Compact Network in Thailand. A warm welcome to you once again. And Dr. Netithorn, I request you to share with us your experiences with the GCNT and how you've managed multi-stakeholder investment towards making significant progress towards the SDGs. Over to you, Dr. Netithorn.
Well, thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Namaste and Swadee Krap. Well, I first of all begin by thanking the Royal Thai Embassy in Kathmandu, especially Your Excellency the Ambassador, and also the Nepal Economic Forum for inviting me to join the panel today. So I suppose that in my first round, I'll just emphasize on the how question by drawing examples from the Global Compact Network Thailand, and then later on in the panel, I'll draw examples specifically from the company level, which is Charoen Pokphand Group or CP Group. I'd like to share the screen now, if I may. Is it okay? Let me see. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes, the screen is visible. Thank you.
Okay, great. So just starting, I mean, the Global Compact Network Thailand is part of the UN Global Compact Local Network, which has about 70 local networks around the world. And it consists of around 13,000 business members, and also the close to 4,000 non-business members. And we operate on the 5 pathways to draw or to encourage activities from the private sector to participate or to be more active in terms of promoting the SDGs and taking part in the responsible business conduct. So these 5 areas are, first of all, the awareness raising. Second is capacity building. Third would be the recognizing leadership. And 4th would be policy dialogue. And 5th is the multi-stakeholder partnerships. All these kind of 5 ingredients are important in shaping the areas of activities, and also the putting the members in the spotlight to give them platforms and opportunities, and also build their capacity to be able to integrate the SDGs and also these universal principles of the Global Compact into their work. And as our colleague from the UNDP had mentioned, the UN Global Compact is a principle-based organization. You see these 4 areas are the 4 areas of the 10 universal principles of the UN Global Compact, which are human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. These are closely linked to the 17 SDGs that you are all familiar with, as you see. I mean, these 4 areas are closely intertwined with all the 17 SDGs, as you can see from this diagram here. So every goal here is kind of intertwined closely with one of the 4 areas of the principles. I don't have time to go into much detail of these principles because the focus of my talk today here is about the how question. So what Global Compact Network Thailand, also the UN Global Compact local networks around the world do is to enable companies, as I had mentioned, is to kind of like we take down the multi-stakeholder partnership in 2 pieces and kind of see how we actually drive this multi-stakeholder partnership into real and concrete outcome on the ground. How do we do that? Well, first of all, just to give you a quick snapshot of the Global Compact Network Thailand, we currently have about 100 organizations as members. 90 of them are companies and 10 of them are non-business. We grew from 2015 when we had about 30 members. Now we have about 100. So it's about 3-fold in about 5 years. And the scale of our impact reaches 187 billion US dollars. This is the market cap of all the members of the Global Compact Network Thailand, which consists our members employ about 750,000 employees. And 2 years ago, we managed to drive our members to commit 39 billion US dollars or 1.3 trillion Thai baht commitment to drive the SDGs in actions through various projects. So this is the kind of commitment or the concrete outcomes that our program could deliver in conjunction with or in collaboration with the Thai government to drive towards the achievement of the SDGs. How do we do that? I mean, this diagram hopefully shows you how this multi-stakeholder partnership works. You see to the left side panel, you see different, a variety of stakeholders that we work with. The UN family, of course, the government itself, and the regulators, such as the Stock Exchange Commission, the embassies located in Bangkok, for example, the Swiss Embassy, the EU Embassy, and many others that we work with, and also associations, not just Global Compact Network Thailand, but we work closely with the Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Industry. So these kind of multi-stakeholders or these stakeholders help drive the partnership for us to deliver our mission, which is to raise awareness among the private sector, to engage these stakeholders together, and also to bring the resources so that we can build capacity through, for example, we built one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, digital library for Thai business sector in terms of the sustainability. And also we promote national advocacy through sustainable development and also business and human rights, for example. And we try to engage more and more members, especially not just the big companies, but also the SMEs. And certainly we do have to communicate them. So these are the 3 goals that we need to achieve. Well, first of all, whatever we do, we need to define the specific goals, especially we stick it with the 17 SDG goals. But second, even equally important, is to make sure that these goals and our actions are scalable. And third, which is scalable back here, is to scale the ambitious and action. It means that we have to involve the SMEs as well. SMEs are important because they are part and parcels of our value chain and supply chain. So without the full participation or effective participation of the SMEs, big corporates or large corporations alone cannot, or Thailand cannot achieve the SDGs through the private sector. So we need to get companies of all sizes from all industries to achieve these actions together. And lastly, we need to make measurable progress. And through this is to make sure that there's a annual report of their actions, which is, we call it communications and progress, that they have to file, and these are publicly available to make sure that there's progress and it is open, it's measurable to the public as well. And this is just example, just how different sectors or pockets of the stakeholders are involved in driving the SDG landscape in Thailand. I don't have much time to go into detail, but you see the variety of the private sector, the youth forum, the international organizations, and the academics and the NGOs that are involved in the SDG platform in Thailand. And in terms of driving the SDGs, at least 60 members of the Global Compact Network Thailand have been committed or have successfully integrated the SDGs as part of their strategies. And as I mentioned earlier, now about they have committed more than 40 billion US dollars in terms of investment towards the SDGs by 2030. And last year, to give you another concrete example how we have successfully pushed towards concrete outcome, is that GCNT members last year made 4 strong commitments. First of all is they recognize the state of climate emergency. Second is to measure their emissions, their greenhouse gas emission. And third is to take concrete actions to reduce TSG, the greenhouse gas emission. And lastly is to commit to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2050 or no later than 2070. And these actions, finally, I think I just want to highlight the first.
Sorry to interrupt. Dr.
Yeah?
Netithorn, sorry to interrupt. We just have a few more minutes.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to wrap this up with the first sentence that our actions managed to drive the government to commit to their carbon neutrality at the COP26. So I just want to see how we, at the private sector level, manage and being able to drive the policy commitment at the national level as well. So that's all I have for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Netithorn. And I think it's incredible what the GCNT has accomplished, close to $40 billion in commitments towards the SDGs. And thank you so much for showcasing how, particularly in the post-pandemic context, how you've enabled businesses to still continue to take action towards the SDGs. The other thing I think that was really fascinating was you touched upon the importance of measurable impact. I think we'll touch on that with another panelist as well. And also the importance of MSMEs and the big role they have to play. So I know we have another panelist here who will definitely probably touch on that topic as well. So thank you so much. We now move to our third panelist. Ms. Provina is the sales director of Yeti Airlines. Yeti, along with its sister airline Tara Air, provides the largest network of flight routes throughout Nepal. It would be great if you could share Yeti's journey for being the first airline to promote the SDGs in Nepal. Over to you, Provina ji.
Thank you, Sneha-ji, and a very good afternoon to all present here. Your Excellency, Sushil Lamsal-ji, Sujeev Shakya-ji, Aishani ma'am, and Sneha-ji, and all the other panelists who are present here. I'd like to thank Thai Embassy and the Nepal Economic Forum for inviting Yeti Airlines to be a part of this wonderful webinar, where we are, exchanging and sharing of ideas of how we can take forward the concept of SDGs. And it would be a wonderful thing to share how this journey of SDG began with Yeti Airlines in the year 2017. It was indeed a very proud moment where we were the first private sector to have tied hands for this partnership with UNDP. And we led by examples where later on Chaudhary Group also got into the forum of joining hands. And now I think it's the two of us in Nepal who are actively into the agreement of SDG promoting certain goals. So in terms of Yeti, out of the 17 goals, what we have taken forth is the 17th and the 13th goal. 13 definitely relating to the climate action, and 17 is the promotion of partnerships as and where we can, relate to and make it visible. Yeti has always been a company who was very, actively involved in terms of CSR activities. And we go by the slogan of saying that flying is not the only thing we do. So we have been involved in various CSR activities since 2007, where we used to allocate a 4 rupee, we used to segregate 4 rupees from every ticket, and we used to hand this token of support to various NGOs and INGOs. And we also used to segregate about 20 rupees from every flight to Nepalganj and Thangari, and that was allocated for the plantation of trees. So that started in 2010, and till now I think we've planted about 272,000 trees, and which is still ongoing because with the renewal of SDG promotion agreement this year with UNDP, we have again set forth a target of at least planting another additional 50,000 within these 2 years. So taking forth our commitment to promoting the 13th goal of SDG, there are numerous activities that we did. One was in the year 2000, starting from the year 2000, I'll just talk about this climate change. We had committed that we would airlift about 100 tons of waste from the Everest region. This commitment was made in the year 2018, and as of now we have airlifted 82,329 kg of waste from Everest. We have tied up with an organization called SPCC and Kathmandu Metropolitan City and Blue Waste to Value for this task. And we just don't bring the we just won't bring the waste and dump it in Kathmandu, but we make it sure that these wastes are actually properly turned into some decorative item or some reusable item. So this is an ongoing commitment that we've made and which we're still carrying on, and we intend to commit our 100-ton promise by the year 2022 or 23 by latest. The other thing that we did, which was a very big turning factor in the aviation industry, and I think in South Asia, as we were the first carbon neutral airline announced in the year 2018, where again we had joined hands with UNDP, and UNDP had introduced us to a carbon neutral expert, Mr. Mitch Hall, who came and helped us and guided us in measuring our carbon emission and guided us in terms of how we can reduce those carbon emission, how we can offset it, and how we can keep that continuity going on. So we were properly measured and offset and actually declared as a carbon neutral airline in 2018, but unfortunately due to the COVID scenario in 2019 we could not give it continuity because of obvious reasons. But again, with this year's renewal with the SDG and with UNDP joining hands, we've again promised that we will be taking this promise way forward, and we actually have already initiated our talks with UNDP, and we really look forward to announcing ourselves as a carbon neutral airlines again in the year 2023, by the year 2023. So that is something to look forward to. And yes, tying hands with UNDP for promotion of SDGs has been a real challenge after after this COVID scenario, because there were a lot of commitments that we've made which could not be fulfilled. But this year we are looking at two major things, considering that Nepal is the hub for tourism. What we intend to do is this year, like we had a talk with Aishani ma'am, and we intend to collaborate with them and implement a tourism project in Lukla Namche trekking trail, which includes setting up of information boards, signages, and standardization details, which we shall mutually agree and take it forward. And Yeti and UNDP will also be collaborating in terms of climate action fund, where we again, as just mentioned earlier, will be planting about 50,000 trees. And we also collaborate again to reduce waste in the Everest region with support in lifting of waste from Lukla to Kathmandu, which will be given continuity. So this is what we're looking forward to in the year 2022 and 2023 with our commitment of SDG joining hands with UNDP.
Thank you so much, Provina ji. I think you also answered another question I had in terms of how you've also been how you're planning your goal, how you're planning to take forward the work you're doing in the post-pandemic context. So thank you so much for that. We're now going to go to Anouk, who is the CEO and co-founder of Timro Concept Store and also a manufacturing consultant for up-and-coming social enterprises in Nepal. I'd like to ask you to share your introductory remarks along with sharing why business as usual is not an option anymore? And do you see a paradigm shift in the MSME sector towards more sustainable business? Over to you, Anouk. Thank you.
Namaste, everyone. I'm just saying up front, I'm so sorry. I have a newborn baby and he was just screaming really loud in the background. So I'm sorry for this. I tried to keep it a little bit short. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted. Yeah, so my name is Anouk Tava. I'm living in Nepal for the past 8 years. I am a manufacturing consultant mostly. I work with, how do you say, purpose-driven brands from mostly the Netherlands, because I'm from the Netherlands myself. Product-based brands that produce artisanal products in Nepal across industries. Jewelries, cardigans, all kind of products. All brands I work with, they have people and planet in the heart of their operations. That means that measuring their impact and measuring outcomes is very important. Actually, at the moment, I'm working on a Living Wage Plus project together with one of the companies I work with at the moment. So we have done in the past week a lot of interviews on people there living wage plus on. I'm so sorry, I hear my baby screaming in the background. I'm so sorry. So what I want to do today is, because I feel it's so important to have the input from, you know, on the ground. What I'm working very much on the ground. I work with mostly artisans and makers, work directly with supply chains. And I think it's very interesting to share some of my recent experiences and challenges that I am walking into together with my clients and the people I work with today in the panel. I'm sorry for this little bit rough introduction. This was, sorry, a little bit bad moment.
It's no problem at all, Anouk. We will come back to you shortly. I think you already raised a very important point of the need to really look at data and measurement as well and tracking. I think we'll go back to Ms. Aishani and start our second round of conversation as well. If I think when you look at SDGs as well, and when we're looking at progress on SDGs, I think the question of data and reporting standardization is also quite critical. And Anouk has touched on it a little bit based on her work on the ground with MSMEs. But maybe Ms. Aishani, you could shed a little bit more light on the indicators that are available to us really when it comes to SDGs. And also as a connecting question, because I see that we are short on time, I'm going to try and do questions in combinations. I hope that's okay. If we could go back to the question of investments in SDGs as well. What do you think is, you know, if you could share some more insights on how, what can be done in Nepal by both the government, private sector and civil society to make investments in SDGs seem less of a risk? Because I think there is probably enough finances, but maybe it's a mindset that needs changes and maybe a policy environment that needs changes. Thank you.
Thank you. And perhaps first, very quickly, Snehaji, Nepal did a lot of things early, even before SDGs came into, like 2015, Nepal was already quite ahead in times in terms of analyzing and preparing the environment, policy environment, the data, the analysis. So that really showed a commitment. I think globally it was really recognized, the way that Nepal prepared in terms of also how they integrated into the plans, 14th and 15th plan, the costing financing. Even now the data might be a bit outdated because we are post-COVID, but Nepal did a lot of analytics works at the more national level. And currently we know roughly about 50%, although 50% of indicators we don't have data. And you know, 231 indicators, 169 targets. So they're roughly around 50% of indicators that we don't have data. But it's not only specific to Nepal. If you take global, even Asia Pacific, it's a similar numbers. And that's unfortunate. And most of the time, these indicators that we lack data, these are mostly related to either gender, either sustainable consumption or production. So it again comes to a little bit onto the private sector, or to the environment, to the last piece, last bit of the climate, the nature, the water, the governance type of indicators, so where we are missing. So it's important that we keep that in mind, but doesn't prevent us as continue to believe that we can get. In the case of Nepal, data is more important because of the diversity of the society, right? One of the principles of Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030 is to leave no one behind. What does it really mean is that we need to know who are these people left behind, if at all, or where are they left behind. So if it is in Dailek or Humla, Jumla, or wherever, or is it in a particular community, we need that data. So that desegregation is lacking and is sometimes impeding the work that we do. In terms of, I think the second question, your discussion was about financing, and at the time of the costing that happened in 2018, 17, 18, there was a gap of, I think, 25% financing gap of 20 billion that was required annually for Sustainable Development Goal agenda, and that was pre-COVID. So don't quote me saying that I said that this is only required for this amount. So that means today the situation has completely changed. Now, perhaps I should have mentioned something that we don't have enough is in Nepal of the subnational level data. We have the up to the federal national data, but provincial and local data, although we've done from UNDP side, we join hands with the provincial governments to do the provincial baselines of sustainable development goals, but that now from there, how to go into the local level, how to make sure that planning, budgeting, and execution of budget follows that line of SDGs. It's the challenge that we have. Yes, we have money. If you take all the, I think very recently I read that the 10 richest men, I insist men in the world, they have 50% of the wealth of the whole world. So yes, we have money, definitely. And how to bring that to where it is required, and how to bring that, it's not only the government's job to finance the sustainable development. I think His Excellency mentioned in his opening remarks of the whole of society approach. And I think that is where every individual, private sector, civil society, or all of us have that responsibility to mobilize resources. Now, the issue right now probably is to see what are the incentives, that how the government and the private sector could work out together in terms of making that enabling environment, post-pandemic enabling environment, so that they can borrow easily, right? They can continue their businesses easily, and they can perhaps insure the people, those who are working in the private sector, and they can perhaps be more incentivized when they do businesses in the renewable energy, let's say digital formatting for education, for example. So really to pick up those areas and make sure that this targeted incentivization is happening in the private sector investment. So this is something that private sector and the government needs to work together. Now, perhaps also the comparable data, it's missing. I think Provina ji mentioned about 2017, other than Yeti, we also had other coalition. We worked with 20 private sector companies. We also signed an MOU with other private companies, but then going forward, they took over, some they did on their own, but as the gentleman presented about the local chapter of the Global Compact, if these types of coalitions don't keep the momentum going and produce comparable data, agree to norms that can be comparable within the companies, and norms and standard, particularly a country like Nepal, which is going to graduate from 2026 from the least developed countries, where the international support system measures will go down, meaning more private sector quality standards will be at the center of the conversation. Probably we have to come together. Tax collection, tax payment. This is again something that the private sector would need to reflect, and the government need to be helped. So I said the borrowing, liquidity crisis, and tax collection, and the debt relief type of things. So these are all on the newspapers today. If we read not only economic updates, but also any newspaper, that today these are the center of the conversation. So I think blended financing, and this is something coming up more and more, green financing, blended financing, and make sure that the revenue streams of the government are compounded, and so to come together and not in this post-pandemic rush, not to forget the sustainable development agenda, and to take that as an opportunity for the children. And I think that would be my message here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'm gonna pick up from that question and go to Dr. Netithorn as well. You had already mentioned the incredible work that businesses in Thailand are already doing. So I have two questions for you. For businesses who have already taken that step towards transformative changes, what is a great way of recognizing and encouraging further investment in areas related to SDGs? And the second question is really because I feel like there's so much to learn from the CP group itself. Could you highlight some of the tremendous impact this group has made and how this has happened over the years as well? Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you. Can you share the screen just one more time?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Can you see the screen now? You can see the screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, just to highlight, I think to answer your question, I think it's to raise awareness among the private sector that investment in the SDGs or any responsible business conduct is like investing in insurance. It is buying insurance for the medium and the long term, because you never know like the risk that could arise from the irresponsible business conduct could disrupt your operations and also your reputation. So in doing so, but we need to actually translate what the returns of these investments are. Just to capture on that, I just want to, we need more than just the returns, but we need the plan. We also need the targets to be able to explain to our senior management. But on top of it, we need the leadership to be able to guide us to make this long-term plan. So just to give you an overview of how we did that in CP Group, if I may, is that CP Group has 8 business lines and 14 business groups, as you see here. So it covers from the ocean all the way up to the mountains. I don't have time to go much into details, but just to give you the variety from the 3 key ones are agri-food, agriculture and food. Second is retail and distribution. Third is telecommunications. But we have also 11 other business across 21 countries, and we employ 450,000 employees across the world. So this is kind of like the scope and scale we have to deal with in terms of promoting sustainable business practice. And what we did is like we developed this house that was based on sufficiency economy and also the UN SDGs and also UN guiding principle on business and human rights and also the global compacts. You see here 15 different goals that we set and with specific numbers. For example, 100% of businesses up here have to implement corporate governance. 100% of all business units have to conduct periodic human rights due diligence every 3 years. We are committed to net zero carbon emissions of organizations operations for the scope 1 and scope 2. And 100% of high-risk raw materials must be traceable and high-risk suppliers audited. So these are the commitments we have made for the 2030, and all of our over 200 companies around the world have to work towards these goals. And these goals were derived from the kind of tone from the top, meaning that it has been derived from our CEO and it has been cascaded to our businesses throughout the world. And the key three ones are on the environmental front, as I had mentioned, will be net zero carbon emissions in the scope 1 and scope 2 by 2030, and 100% achieve zero food waste and waste to landfill and use of sustainable packaging by 2030 as well, and 20% reduction in water withdrawals per unit revenue compared to baseline year 2020 by the year 2020. So if you're asking me how did it happen, I think it's like, first of all, the most important is tone from the top. Second is to get to set the clear targets. And third would be to promote transparency and so also measurable targets by setting the annual report. We have the sustainability annual report that helps kind of in terms of data gathering and also measurable progress over the years. And it promotes transparency, accountability, and also the commitment from our business units. So I just want to, that's a quick synopsis of how we have done it so far.
Thank you so much, Dr. Netithorn. Anouk, are you there? I think I'll come back to you.
Yes, I am.
I think we had a really interesting conversation when it comes to a lot of companies signing up even for the global goals. I mean, we see sometimes there's a tendency to SDG wash some of the reporting on progress. And Anouk, I think because you work closely with a lot of actors on the ground, you mentioned there's research you're doing to ensure that the impact of what the MSMEs are doing are measurable and they're not over-reported. So could you shed some light on some of that work you're doing at the moment?
Yes, of course. I will just give some very practical examples because I feel sometimes that the experiences I have are very unseen, you know. I mean, to give a voice to the people, the makers, the artisans I work with. It's, first of all, let me say it is very challenging. As you already said, if you sign up to reach these goals, it's sometimes almost like they are competing with each other. Sometimes we decide, 1 minute. I'm sorry. No, I have companies that find it very important to have a positive impact on people by, for example, paying a living wage plus income. Now, here, the first challenge with this is that to do this, we need to have an understanding of some kind of average, right? Like the average of how much do people have to pay for their food monthly, how much rent do people pay, what do they pay for the education for their children. But what we realize is in such a diverse country as Nepal and such a diverse group of people we work with is that there is not one average. So, for example, with one of the clients I work with this week, we realized that working with so much different communities, how do you say, finding this average is extremely complicated. Just to give you an example, I work with a we produce with one company that make beaded jewelry, but most of the people who work in this company, they come from outside the valley. They come from very far from rural areas. These people, they don't have land. They stay in rooms, like one room per family. They go to very either government school or you know, I would say the most affordable private schools. But we also work with a company that the people often come from Patan area. They own some own land. They often have their own house. It's all for the same company, right? But the average of these people is very different, right? So I hope I give enough information to make it understandable. So the living wage, I find the living wage already on its own so complicated, because if you have a piece of land in Patan, we all know the value of land in Nepal, then you could say you have some kind of social security, right? Now, these people, they don't have to pay rent. These people might earn 10,000 or 15,000 rupees because they work part-time, but they don't have a really big problem. The same people in the other areas who earn maybe 30,000 because they work with a bonus and they get even more than a living wage plus, they still will never have enough. So this is very complicated, and this is on the people, on the, that we say people and planet, this is on the people level. But in the, I also see a lot of complications in the supply chain, because in the craft industry, which is so important to Nepal, I mean, we have so much like ancient craftsmanship in Nepal. And if we, part of my work is, why I'm passionate about my work is because we try to preserve skills and craftsmanship. But if we talk about sustainability goals, it's so complicated to create a sustainable supply chain, because all our natural high valued resources go to India to be processed. We barely have any processing in Nepal. And we, for example, if we talk about, I have talked about this so many times, but if we talk about gemstones, we have many in Nepal, but it's not regulated. It goes to Jaipur and comes back, and not even paid taxes for, but under the table, right? Why don't we find a way, or why are there no policies to support local economies and how do we say, regulate this industry so that we can do the processing in those areas and support also local economies within Nepal, so that the high value product is within Nepal sold, but also with hemp, with nettle, all these fibers that go to other countries to be made into fabrics and then imported back to Nepal again. So a lot of our natural resources are going outside the country and we import them again. So there are so many challenges, even if you sign up for this. And the problem with this is it becomes almost, the product becomes so highly priced, the production price in Nepal is so high that it's barely sellable outside the country. We have so much, and now that we have the all the prices are hiking, I see huge challenges coming up, because I don't know how we can still make products in the future that are sellable in, for example, the Netherlands. If these are a few of the examples I have from my, I don't know if people have questions, because I have so many examples, but.
I want to apologize. I think we are actually very, very short on time. In fact, we've already gone over time as well. And, you know, this has been actually a really fascinating panel, but a very difficult one to try and moderate as well, because we're bringing in both perspectives from a macro level, from a policy perspective, from the GC&T principles perspective as well as from a large corporate, and then also perspectives from the ground. We've tried to do the best we can in our time. So I think we have maybe about 3 more minutes, and I'd actually like to open up the floor to any one of the panelists, maybe with a closing remark on maybe your thoughts on what are some steps you think we can take to improve regional synergies between Nepal and Thailand, particularly in terms of how we can share and emulate best practices on contributing towards the SDGs. I will request if any one of you would like to respond to that question, please, before we wrap up. Thank you. Maybe Dr. Netithorn or Aishani, if I can request you.
Thank you, Snehaji. I think thank you so much, and there's so much to exchange in between the two countries, and I think this is a great start, and NEF should continue to do that, and UNDP stands ready to facilitate. We have a very active UNDP representative in Thailand as well, but to tell you that we just saw that Anup, how she was distracted by her baby, and I think that speaks a lot. The question that you didn't ask about gender and women and sustainable development goals. So my clear to all of us is that protect women, give them equal salary, think about their time that is spent between children and parents, think about their mental health and their well-being, and trust them, they can do things, and give them the opportunity to lead, and don't underestimate them. And I think there's a lot to learn from Thai women, to Thai men, women, and also other gender, the work that business sector did. And we could definitely learn in Nepal. And likewise, Nepal can definitely export some of its very interesting and I think work that they did even before SDGs started. And UNDP stand ready. Although in my lifetime, as per the latest data, in my lifetime, we would not achieve SDGs, because the latest say that it will be in 2065. So I will be gone from this world by the time that if SDGs are achieved at this pace. And it is in all our hands, I think, individually and collectively, to make that agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'd like to maybe head into the wrap up now. As we heard from the panelists today, I think in spite of the COVID pandemic and that having decelerated some of the progress, there still is an opportunity to leapfrog and still emulate best practices, because I feel like a lot of the new generation of consumers also have begun demanding that companies act in the interest of sustainability. I'd just like to end by saying that I hope we can find ways to cooperate for a better future, for example, with GCN in Nepal and Thailand coming together, along with actors at each level coming together, like yourselves, for the collective health and prosperity of our people, our planet, and our South and Southeast Asia region, because all of that really depends on us working together. I'd like to thank all of you once again, especially the chairs and co-chairs of this panel as well, and our incredible panelists, potentially the audience who joined us on Facebook, along with members of the Royal Thai Embassy and the Nepal Economic Forum for organizing this session. I really apologize for going over time, but thank you so much. Have a really great afternoon, everyone. Namaste and Kopanka.